Finding it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere, at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go. Finding it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go.
Hi, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. Welcome back to day 2 of the Digital X Data 2020 live virtual conference. We hope you have enjoyed the opening session and both the Smart City and Green tracks yesterday. If this is your first session, and whether you are currently watching this from WebEx, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, my name is Myra from Star Media Group's award-winning Rage investigative journalism team, and I'm your host for this 4-day live virtual conference. All right, guys, before we begin, we want to announce a special prize draw winners of yesterday's session. And yes, you heard it right. For those who have just joined us, all you need to do is stay with us till the end of each session, and you will stand a chance to win exciting prizes. So let's see who are the winners of yesterday's sessions. For the winners of the Philips Bluetooth wireless headphone, we have Miss Kartini Jalani and Chuen Luan Moy. For the winners of Skull Candy wireless headphones, we have Eileen Oi and Chai Chen Liang. The Honor Band 5 Sports Edition winners are Lo Wei Ming and Beth Ching Seong. Congratulations to all the winners. Our events crew will be contacting you separately at the end of the event at your registered email address or mobile number for the arrangement. All right, I'm sure you're excited to kick off the conference as much as I am. Just a few quick housekeeping matters before we begin. Please be patient if you experience any technical or internet glitches. This is a live online event and everyone dials in from different internet bandwidths and devices. For WebEx participants, your microphones and video cam are turned off by default, but do feel free to chat with our events crew directly if you need any assistance. You can also email us at events@thestar.com.my if you need any assistance. Lastly, and most importantly, please engage, learn, and enjoy. To learn more about the conference program and the speaker's profile, please scan the QR code on the top right of your screen or go to bit.ly/dxd agenda. All right, so it's quite obvious with the global pandemic and hyperconnectivity has accelerated. However, hyper vulnerability has no doubt, and it sets into. At today's power session, we will look at rethinking cybersecurity strategies and reevaluating security models to create a culture of cyber resiliency by rewriting security roadmaps to transform businesses in 2021. We are very humbled and honored to have a very powerful panel who will grace today's opening power panel. At first, guest panelist is Mr. Abid Adam, the Group Chief Risk and Compliance Officer of Axiata. Abid has over 16 years of industry experience in risk management, cybersecurity, and privacy from multiple continents. Our second guest panelist is dialing in all the way from Singapore. He has over 20 years of experience in the information and cybersecurity and IT management. He is Murari Kalyanaramani, currently the Executive Director of Cybersecurity Services at Standard Chartered Bank. Also dialing in is a very special guest from the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission. He is chairman of MCMC and he has more than 22 years of experience, holding several senior positions in public and private sector. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Fadullah Sohaimi. And moderating the panel is our very own Asuhan Aryadurai, who is the senior editor of the Star Online. Asuhan is no stranger to the local and regional tech ecosystem. All right. The panel is getting ready, so please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a short while.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the lovely introduction, Myra. And welcome to our power panel, Re-Engineering Security in the Next Normal. You've already been introduced to our guests, so I'm going to get right to it and first ask them to explain about what they do and what their charters are in their respective organizations. So I'll start with you, Abid, since you're here, right?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sohan and the fellow panelists. I hope you're all keeping well, and assalamu alaikum to everybody. My name is Abid Adam. I am the Group Chief Risk and Compliance Officer for Axiata. And my key responsibilities, I look after the 4 key areas, which is cybersecurity, data privacy, compliance, ethics, integrity, and enterprise risk management. So that's what keeps me awake, and that's what has made me lose all my hair. Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. Murari, can you go next?
Yeah, hi, Murari here, and I currently head global application and infrastructure security for Standard Chartered Bank, and that coverage extends to our global footprint. So it's 70 countries, around 1,200 over offices and branches, and protecting over 87,000 employees.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Farullah. You have
Uh,
the stage.
right.
Yours is the most. Yours will be the, I think, most look forward to.
Hi, good morning. Assalamualaikum to Asohan and fellow panelists and everyone. I'm currently heading MCMC, the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission. We pretty much our remit falls under the Act of Communications and Multimedia Act that covers the industries of telecommunications, broadcasting, postal and courier, as well as Digital Signature Act. So that pretty much covers the whole gamut of what's online.
Okay, thank you. Now we go straight into some of the questions that we or areas we'd like to explore. And of course, first in everyone's mind is the global pandemic and how it has changed the way we live and the way we do business. So I'd like the panelists to start off by talking about how has it changed the cybersecurity landscape specifically. I think I will start with you, Abid. Can you tell us what your organization was doing before, and quickly go into how the pandemic has changed, if anything, how you work and how you approach cybersecurity for your own organization?
Thank you, Sohan. So I think more than change, I think there are a few things that has expanded or accelerated. Number one, and number two, there are new things that we're seeing evolving faster. So allow me to elaborate three key items that I think I see personally what has evolved. Number one, if you're talking about from a cybersecurity perspective, I think it's an increase in broader attack landscape, all right? And I'll elaborate again.
Yeah, you're going to have to explain that one.
Yeah. Now, I would like to just outline the three, and then I'll explain the details behind it. So the number one was increase in broader attack landscape. Number two was the issue of data privacy, as you mentioned. So disclosure or protecting thereof has now been even more important than before, right? And then last is more sort of kind of virtual meeting fatigue, but that leads to cyber attacks also, because people now maybe clicking on links, they are tired, and they see a lot of emails coming through. And this has been proven with the facts. We've seen significant increase in phishing attacks globally. FBI reported 300% increase. Cybersecurity Malaysia has reported similar increase in number of phishing attacks. So I think those are kind of things that we have seen, not it's new, but it has increased because of the very nature of the pandemic itself. Allow me to elaborate on item one, which I've shared with you, which is increase in broader attack landscape. What I mean by that is, if you look at the concept of work in office versus work from home, when you work in office, generally your infrastructure is adequately secure and managed by the relevant technical functions. When you're working from home, the very router that you use or the network equipment you use to connect to the office network is not managed by your IT department. So somebody who maybe have bought a router, a cheapest one that they wanted to, and those cheapest router has a default password admin, or sometimes doesn't even have admin password, it's completely blank. But that now becomes your security team's responsibility, ensuring that that infrastructure is protected, because that is how that person is connecting into your environment. So that has obviously increased the things we need to protect, the things we need to look out, and also train our users around how do you make sure that that becomes part of a broader ecosystem. So I'll pause there, Sohan, and share this with you.
Murari, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I think leveraging what Abid was saying, the attack surface, right? So I think from a business standpoint, I think there's been more reliance on leveraging digital channels to provide services, and I think this is not just with banking, but even consumer goods. So a lot of organizations had to pivot from traditional brick and mortar kind of operations. So you take banks where branches, for example, a number of countries had to be shut down. And that pivoted a lot of push of features, capabilities, and service through mobile channels. So that became suddenly a very attractive attack surface because there's more opportunities there to exploit. I think the other thing to add there as well is more adoption of cloud technology, because I think a lot of infrastructure and application teams to not only support the business but also customers had to scale very quickly. So the adoption of cloud technology, working with partners like, AWS and Azure, for example, has again, changed the attack surface from, sitting behind our networks to actually extending our networks into the public domain. I think on the threat perspective, I mean, again, I won't repeat what Abid had said. I think I agree with those points. But I think, what COVID has also done is sort of heighten the awareness and monitoring around insider threats. And what do I mean by that? I think with economic conditions as such, organizations, potentially having to retrench employees, reduce benefits, reduce salaries, bonus, there's probably increased motivation for employees who are impacted, who have actually very, increased access to systems to actually commit fraudulent activities. So I think insider threat is definitely one thing.
The whole disgruntled employee thing.
Correct. So I think that has also taken a heightened importance to keep a close eye on as well.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Fadlullah, I mean, being with MCMC, I'm not so much interested in how your organization has approached work from home in the global pandemic, but how you as the industry regulator see the landscape changing. What I think MCMC can do about it. I mean, has there been increase in complaints about cybersecurity breaches? Have there been increase in complaints about or demands for greater broadband access and all? And how are you going to approach this?
Yeah, I think what has happened with COVID-19 is that there is a increased usage of internet. Right, everybody seems to be online today. Even the makcik at home who would have never ordered food for lunch now orders food via Grab. Okay, so that is really something different that we've never seen before. Okay, so what has happened is that more and more people are getting online, and therefore more and more people are being exposed. Okay, so on two fronts. One, they're now online. They want better quality. Okay, and today the quality of service need not necessarily be at the distribution that used to be pre-COVID. Because many of us would have been in offices as opposed to being at home during the normal working hours. So therefore, the network is now challenged because it has to do a lot of rebalancing to make sure that the traffic is being done, balanced properly, so that the quality of service improves. And that is where our biggest challenge is today. We get a lot of complaints, more so on coverage, less on cybersecurity. Okay, a lot on fake news, where people will put a lot of fear into everyone because, as you see, people are now online. They have access to platforms. They think they would like to add their own content into it, and therefore we have to work extra hours to oversee a lot of complaints with regards to questionable content that comes through. So, if I were to rank between complaints on connectivity, fake news, fake content, and cybersecurity, at least what comes to our door, it's 1, 2, and 3 in that order.
Okay, thank you. Murari and Abid, you're both speaking from the perspective of big companies where you have your own IT security teams and departments to look into this. The problem is right now a lot of smaller companies, SMEs and all that, have had to introduce work from home policies. They don't have an IT department. Sometimes they don't even have an IT person. Can you give us some ideas or suggestions for them how to approach cybersecurity if they go fully into work from home or even partially into work from home? What are the areas they have to watch out for? You were talking about routers and home networks and all that. That's one. What does your CEO of a small 5-man company do? How should they approach it? The 20-man company, the 100-man company. What are the issues they have to face? Let's start with you, Abid.
Yeah, I think whether you're a large company or a 10 or 100-man company, I think there are certain things that are universally applicable, right? So I would start off with attackers does not discriminate. Basically, they throw a net as wide as possible and catch as many fish as possible. So if we are looking at it from a small, medium enterprise perspective, things that they can do and doesn't cost a lot of money is first and foremost the awareness and education. Simple things on social engineering, because that's where even the big companies, unfortunately, gets trapped, right? So the awareness on phishing, and there's a lot of free material available. Cybersecurity in Malaysia, next, all of these agencies, government agencies also provides that. So I think that's what a good start that they should do, because I think that will prevent quite a bit of a problem. Secondly, I think it's more about understanding where are those SMEs quite exposed. So if you're talking about matches ordering through some online platform, that an online platform provider needs to ensure if that's the source of its greatest revenue, make sure that that's protected. So they don't have to do everything, but at least protect that quite strongly. Last but not least, and this is a very small matter, but actually very important matter. A lot of the time, attackers use social engineering techniques. And the simple way to do it, example, is I could phone you at home and say, I'm phoning from your IT help desk. Let me take over your computer. And suddenly you see the mouse cursor moving, and then they are taking over your computer. And you may think that that's stupid or sounds silly, but that's really what happens. So even if you're a small enterprise, having a simple protocol that if your IT help desk calls you, this is the protocol it will follow. If it doesn't follow this, then there's something wrong. Will save you and go a long way. So I think I'll pause there because these are some very practical things you can do.
Okay. Murari, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think for a smallish company or an SME, I think the fundamental decision they need to make is, do we buy or do we build, right? Do we buy the capability or build our own? And I think in most cases now the landscape is such that a lot of the products or services one obtains or purchases comes with security in embedded as native capabilities, like cloud, for example. So I think definitely buying would be good. However, just to extend on Abid's point as well, I think some of the factors which would sort of apply irrespective of size of company would be that they should never compromise on the cyber hygiene controls, and a lot of these are basic IT controls which have always been there. For example, know what your assets are, know what your connections are, because if you don't know what your attack surface or assets are, you don't know how to protect them, right? I think the second thing is also to ensure that in the event you're buying or building, is the technology life cycle is also very important, because I think a lot of organizations struggle with legacy technology which is not kept up to date, and it becomes very expensive to maintain end of support or end of life systems. And more importantly, a lot of these end of life or end of support systems can't accept, for example, security patches. And that would be my last point. A lot of people talk about the sophistication of cyber attacks and threats, but if you look at the actual vectors they are exploiting, these are basic things which have always been there, right? The end user over email and phishing, exploiting unpatched systems. So I think cyber hygiene is should be maintained at all costs in that sense.
Yeah, most attacks are brute force attacks, and too many people are still using Windows 95 machines, especially in the small and medium enterprise space.
Yeah.
Dr. Fadlullah, I mean, I was just thinking, your team, MCMC, has done tremendous work with the Banania website, where you're debunking a lot of fake news, and this provides a lot of guidance for people. Have you guys considered doing something for cybersecurity in terms of small organizations moving towards a work from home policy environment, guidance on what do you need to do step by step, what are the areas you have to watch out for, and putting it somewhere on your website?
One of the things that we're looking at is that, but just to correct you, today, with regards to the advisory on cybersecurity, there is an organization called the Cybersecurity Malaysia that undertakes that. So the last thing we want to do is to actually duplicate anyone's work. Okay, but certainly we're more than happy to amplify, and we are actually putting together a set of activities undertaken by a variety of agencies within the space of cybersecurity, which we will be announcing soon. The minister did allude to it roughly about a week back that there's this thing that she's going to mention. It's pretty much putting together things that we have done before, things that had been done, but probably people didn't quite care about, because at that point in time, cybersecurity is just something like, okay, yeah, fine, cybersecurity. I'm not a tech guy, so I don't care. But today, because people are afraid, so probably it relates to them better, and therefore we're just pulling that all together and putting it out there yet again so that people will understand. So just like we did with Sebenar.my, for a while people thought Sebenar.my is quite dead and gone, but until COVID-19 came about and people started to come up with funny news, be it how to treat COVID-19 and stuff like that, and therefore we had to then ramp up, and I think we went through this truth campaign recently, just to get people back on track and to appreciate that fake news is not good news. So likewise for cybersecurity, we will be undertaking the same soon.
Okay, thank you. So, this is the season. Everyone's talking about budget 2021. A lot of areas. There are elements of cybersecurity in budget 2021. We do know that earlier this year, before COVID-19 itself, there were a couple of research reports that shows that we have a lack of cybersecurity experts in this country, and it's quite critical. And I would like to know, and we'll start with you, Murari. Fair warning. What do you think of the budget in terms of cybersecurity and the areas it pays attention to? Where do you think we should focus more attention on? What is missing in budget 2021 in terms of cybersecurity? And not just talking about for businesses, but also for consumers.
Yeah, I think, what I would say is, I would first say that, it's very important that the government has taken the step to set aside some money for cybersecurity. And I think that was recognition that it's important enough that it needs to be addressed. I think what the advice I would give to everyone is that, and when I say that is, all types of organizations, whether it's public sector or private sector, people shouldn't sit back and say that, okay, now it's the government's responsibility. They have the money. They need to go and solve all the cyber issues in the country, right? It's everyone's responsibility, and that the money which is set aside is not the silver bullet, right? So each organization who makes up the entire ecosystem in Malaysia has a role to play. So everybody needs to take the responsibility to assess their risk and set aside the budget. And I think the second thing I would like to stress there is that, again, I think what we need to see more of is actually public and private sector collaboration and information sharing around threats. I think everybody sees different types of attacks, gets different types of threat intelligence. I think it's very important as an ecosystem, public and private sector, there's a lot of more collaboration and information sharing. I think in terms of focus, I think you brought up a point around the talent issue, right? And I think there's two ways to look at it. So I think from a pipeline or talent pipeline perspective, I think there are already steps being taken, and Standard Chartered has worked with Cybersecurity Malaysia in the past to help with that ecosystem development. And I'm aware that CSM works with a number of institutions of higher learning in Malaysia to sort of develop that next breed of cybersecurity specialists, targeting various domains within cybersecurity. So that's very good. But I think the challenge remains that that's pipeline, and that will help us solve a problem in the future when we have talent gaps. But I think we have a problem now, and that, really that's where organizations need to be a bit more agile and, look at other options to fill that gap.
Thank you. Abid, I'll go with you, Dr. Fadullah, last, so that you can address some of the points that the two gentlemen bring up.
Yeah, sure.
I think just continuing on Murari's point there, I think it's first of all a good start. It's not the quantity of the amount allocated, but it's the message that's been sent out that cybersecurity is important, the government's taking it important, and it certainly has increased the sort of a spotlight. As you may be aware, recently NEXA also released the cybersecurity strategy for the country. So it's good to see that the various agencies, CSM, NEXA, and Axiata works very closely with all our partners in government agencies and non-government agencies to strengthen the cybersecurity resilience for Malaysia. If you are then looking at in terms of things that, I think the issue about the expertise is not Malaysia specific. I think this is a global issue. I don't think any country can claim that they have produced enough cyber experts to meet the demands. And in a short term at the moment, of course, that issue will continue and then maybe even exacerbate more given the COVID situation and more adoption of digital technologies. So what do we do about it? Similar to what Murari has mentioned, is partnership with the universities. I personally have been to some of the universities, UPA, the Pacific one, UPNM, and so forth. But I feel that there should be some level of bridging the gap between even the university students coming out, because the challenge you find in reality is you find the university students come up, they may be university fit, but not really business fit. So it's how do we accelerate and close that gap so they can be more productive from day one. And I think those are some of the programs we're working with some of the agencies on, and some of the even non-government agencies like MDEC, non-profit agencies, sorry, like MDEC, to close this gap. So I think I'll pause there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Fadlullah?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The message on cybersecurity has been mentioned, okay, which is great. In fact, I think the bigger message is that the country is moving down the digital economy at a faster pace as opposed to what it used to talk about, simply because that is probably what's available to the country in trying to get us out of this economic challenge that we are now faced with, okay. And in relation to that, there have been in terms of how much funds are being put aside, again, funds will always be pulled from with varying priorities. There's some amount being made available to CSM, but I think what's missing that people may not realize is that, as pointed out by my two panelists, what is it that we should do as an individual? And actually, there's a lot that we can do. Simply subscribing to protection services, okay, to which that is a form of tax relief that you can actually get under your lifestyle tax relief that you get year in, year out. Most of us don't do that. We use it for some other things. So it's all these tools are already there. What's important is people need to understand the need for cybersecurity, and again, within the organizations, don't just look at the budget per se. Remember, prior to the budget, there was also the announcement on the Prihatin program and the Penjana program, within which both had components of digitalization for the small, medium industries. And again, cybersecurity would be embedded within that availability of that grant for them to use. So again, the funds are being made available. You probably won't get a freebie from the government all the way, but certainly it has made people realize the importance of cybersecurity. There is assistance to some extent for them. And with regards to the workforce, unfortunately, as Abid pointed out, it's a global problem. Okay, we can't resolve it overnight. But one thing I would like to request for most companies, that today technology moves very, very fast. And if you expect students coming out of universities are actually ready to jump into the deep end of the pool, I think we are sadly misguided, because the business requirements differ from one place to another. Levels of adoption is different from one place to another. And when the uni students come out, they are probably not work ready, but they are ready for work. Okay, so, and it is actually the task falls on the businesses to actually quickly train them up during the induction. And this is something that seems to be missing, and it's just not for cybersecurity, but many parts of the disciplines, be it even in management per se. People expect things to just happen just because someone is a graduate. So I think things have moved. We are no longer trained in the discipline that we are trained in, and we get to work in the discipline that we are trained in. We all have to learn to adapt, and therefore companies need to also help build that bridge for that. And lastly, I think I'd like to also touch on the PPP approach, okay, the public-private partnership that Murali, you mentioned about. Yes, I do believe that we probably need to do a lot more engagement. I know NACSA does a fair bit of engagement together with CSM. Question is, do we have a very big group? I remember years ago when internet just came to the fore, and the banking industry just kind of like got around the fact that you can do things online. I used to be in the internet banking task force years ago. and that brought all the banks together with the agencies. I was not with MCMC then, but I was with one of the service providers, and we were there together to kind of like help each other to see where are the gaps and how can we actually help. And I think that's a model. Personally, I'll take it on to bring it with Naxa, because under the digital economy that I mentioned about, there is a cluster called infrastructure and data, to which cybersecurity will fall under that. That is chaired by the Minister of Communications and Multimedia, YB Saifuddin. So we're certainly working on that score, and I'll probably call upon my two panelists here to be involved in that just as well. Can't get any better people to get information and ideas from. Thanks.
Right, great to hear that. I'm going to ask something about your own personal opinion, Dr. Falula. Given a choice between putting effort into producing more cybersecurity experts or making everyone more cybersecurity aware, where would you balance it? I mean, which do you think is more important?
Personally, I think the second is more important. Everybody should be aware about cybersecurity, as opposed to getting more experts. The reality is you will never be able to fulfill the demand side, okay? But you can certainly manage the demand. And therefore, if people are all aware and everybody takes their own responsibility, I'm quite sure we will see a lesser amount of threat out there. I mean, let me just take an example. House crime, or rather house break-ins. Do we expect to see more police outside our house, or should we manage our own house as best as possible to reduce the possibility of a house break-in? And certainly, we need to also take responsibility by making sure our doors are locked, our windows are closed when we're not home, possibly put an alarm just to not so much to prevent them from coming in, from thieves from coming in, but actually is to deter them. So therefore, we will, I think, spending money wisely. If I have only 10 ringgit, I'll spend on making sure people will be more aware about cybersecurity.
Yeah, I get your point. It's cybersecurity is not about making sure you're never attacked, but making sure you're not an attractive target.
Absolutely.
There's someone else who's more easier to break into.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to go a bit individual and attack some of our guests here. So we'll start with you, Abid. Axiata. As you know, in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of, especially since the massive data leak from about 2 years ago, a lot of people are complaining about increased scam calls, phishing attacks, like you pointed out as well, and they all feel that it comes from the leakage of their personal data and numbers. Can you give us a brief rundown of what the telco industry has done to shore up its defenses and make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
So I think if you take 3 years ago, there's a lot of things that have evolved globally. And there's a lot of best practices that are starting to settle in. Some of the things that I can share openly is adoption of a world-leading global framework like NIST, which has been utilized not just by Axiata, but I have good relationships with the CISOs in let's say financial services, the head of CISO in Barclays based out of in US and so forth. So those adoption of this framework and adopting the maturity year on year, increasing that is number one, because that puts us in a same level playing field with our global competitors. Again, I think going back to our MCMC chairman, Dr. Falula's view, that this is not just about cybersecurity. This is about building that digital trust and in building the digital economy. So we got to get that going. Because if Malaysia wants to be a competitive economy, which is digitally progressive, we got to make sure we're sort of going above and beyond just understanding basic cyber hygiene, right? So that's number one. Number two, it was really around driving the tone from the top. So again, if I echo back Dr. Falula's words, it's no more just purely an IT issue. So historically, whenever you talk about cybersecurity, there's always some guy in IT in the back office, you must go and sort it out. Why are you bothering me with this? If you look at where the organizations are, and I can personally speak about Axiata, and if you look at our annual financial reports, there's been a lot of focus we spend significant amount of resources, management time in discussing this. As far as going to say that even our group CEO, Tan Sri Jamaluddin's personal KPI has got cybersecurity that's been driven by the board. And all the CEOs that are in our operating companies have cybersecurity as a KPI. So I think that's similar to Cybersecurity Malaysia's budget announcement by the minister. It sets the right tone. It gives that sort of impression that we are, to the ordinary employee and everybody in the company, that cybersecurity is important. And obviously setting up policies, governance structures. So a lot has evolved since the 2017 breach that you are talking about. Last but not least is collaboration again. So if you look at, because I don't think, my personal view, no one company has answers and are able to defend all the cyber attacks that come to them and all the solutions that are out there. So strong collaboration. If I again go back to using the Axiata's experience over the last 3 years, we have signed formal MOUs with MDEC, Cybersecurity Malaysia, Nexa. Located from a global context, we are the first and only telco to be part of the first alliance, which allows us to understand what the threats are. So I think being part of the global certs and understanding what is happening, using that knowledge to protect the country and the customers, I think those are some of the developments that I feel has better positioned us now than where we were 3 years ago. Thank you.
Murari, banking. Now everyone is going to have to go digital banking, online banking. I'm pretty sure has gone up since the pandemic began. Can you tell us about what, as a consumer or a company, customers have to watch out for when they start going more fully into digital banking? What steps should they take, especially small businesses, to make sure that there's no breach or anything?
Yeah, I think I'll start first with the company's perspective, right? So I think one of the things which has sort of changed, pre-COVID and now, is the scale and acceleration in terms of the technology we are landing, whether it be to our consumers or within the company to the employees itself. And I think our mantra has always been how do we safely deliver that acceleration and scale. And I think why that's important is that we've had to change our ways of working within security teams. Gone are the days where we have the time and luxury to sit down and review projects, review initiatives, and take our time to assess them and provide the approval. Everything is a matter of minutes or days or hours, in fact, right? So I think we've had to deliver a lot of automation in our ways of working to be able to meet that scale and digital transformation. So that's one. I think from a consumer perspective, I think especially with Standard Chartered, we are in countries where we've been for hundreds of years, right? So I think a lot of older people very comfortable going to the branches, and suddenly they have to pivot to the online channels, and they're not even digital savvy or digital aware. So I think more to be done on educating these end users around the risks on using digital banking. I think the other thing which has happened is definitely a lot of heightened monitoring around our attack surface or our external infrastructure, like our VPN connectivities. So that's something which has happened, and I think increase in the amount of simulations we're doing or drills around are we ready when we get attacked, right? And what are the different ways we can be attacked, and to ensure that our processes and our responses are well oiled in nature. And that includes not just targeting IT or technology teams, but also business teams and even the board of directors, right? So and that includes areas such as ransomware, right? Because I think ransomware attacks and breaches have taken place at a worrying scale. But something like ransomware involves the whole organization, especially around decision-making rights. Are we going to pay the ransom or not pay the ransom? That's not a IT manager's decision or CISO's decision. That sits with the board. So they need to be educated and aware of the risk. And when we run these simulations, you realize there are other things involved. For example, with ransomware, are we going to hire a professional negotiator? Have we set aside money to do that, to negotiate the ransom? If we're going to pay the ransom, do we actually have a Bitcoin account? Because it's not a matter of transferring cash. You got to pay in Bitcoin. So my point there is, when we run these simulations, it's very important to do so, because then you sort of pick out these things which you haven't thought about before, which is on paper, and it sort of allows the organizations to actually be more well-oiled and fast in their response to contain any breaches as much as possible. So these are some of the things we've seen, changing. More awareness to the consumer, definitely, where they're not comfortable or not digitally savvy, more heightened monitoring, and definitely more simulation to enhance the preparedness in the case of any attacks.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Fadullah, I have a very quick question before we open the floor for, or rather the matrix for questions from the audience. You've seen budget, going back a bit to the budget, but in the wake of the budget 2021 announcement, one of the ministers also said they are looking at reviewing the cyber laws in this country. We go back to the Computer Crimes Act, it's 1998, 1996 or something.
Yep.
When you meet the minister personally, what advice do you give him? What are the areas and weaknesses in our cyber laws that need to be plugged?
We always think that the moment we go online, it's kind of like a new world. In reality, it's just an extension of the existing world with a little bit of tweaking here and there. So the laws that we have today, example, our PDPA, our Communications Multimedia Act, Computer Crimes, Penal Code, and a few other acts within the security ambit, it's already there. The question is, are these acts fit for the period that we are in today? Example, some of the acts may be technology agnostic, but the penalty as a result of any contravention of such act is not punitive enough. Okay, sometimes you get a fine of 10,000 ringgit. Hey, no biggie, I'll just pay and I'll move on. So things like that will have to be looked at. And even for CMA, our act was gazetted way back in the year it was crafted in 1998. So that's 22 years down the road. And I'm quite sure internet wasn't what it used to be in 1998 as what it is today. And therefore, a lot of things are happening. So when my conversation with not just my minister, but with a few other ministers is that we probably need to sit back, revisit what are the new challenges that we see in cybersecurity, look at whether we can, do we need new add-ons or amendments to the law, number one. Probably not to create a new law, because to try to create a new law will just take us a good 2 years down the road, and by then the technology that we are debating about today will have moved on to a different technology, and it might still not be fit for purpose. But the existing laws are there. We can certainly tighten that, and that is something that they are looking at. They have also talked about creating a commission for cybersecurity. Whether that will be something that will happen or not, again, we need to revisit how all these acts come into play. Because many of the times the acts falls on different agencies, and to you and I as a consumer, we're totally confused. Do I go to the police? Do I go to MCMC? Do I go to CSM? Do I go to the domestic and trade? Sometimes I just don't know who do I go to, and guess what? I'll just stay at home and complain and complain and complain.
On social media, rather. Huh?
Exactly. So that will happen. So this is something that we have to deal with, and the landing will probably not be so soon, but certainly the conversation is happening as we talk about. And like I said, having the Digital Economy Council chaired by the Prime Minister shapes the discussions that we need to do, and also shapes the areas that we need to refine to make sure that when we do get on board that whole big ship called digital economy, we are all better fit to actually make sure that the country moves in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Digital citizens, yeah? Okay, we have opened the floor for questions. Please, if you have any questions for the gentleman, you won't get them again on the same stage or on the same screen for a while. We are open to questions from the audience. If you guys have anything to ask, now's the time. Don't be shy. We can't see you. Okay. While we are waiting for questions to come in, can you name one example, Dr. Fadullah, that you'd like to see a change in terms of the cyber laws in this country? One small, you spoke about punitive measures, so the quantum of punishment was much less than 10,000 Ringgit 20
Yep.
years ago was very different from 10,000 ringgit today, right? What other change would you like to see? Or what do you think is one key element that you'd like to immediately tackle?
Okay, when you talk about security and trying to regulate, what's important is we must have the ability to regulate. Okay, today we have a lot of applications over the top. We call them, and many of them are offering it from out of the country, and many of them are not licensed. And when someone complains, say MCMC, please take action. How can we? Because they do not fall under our laws. Okay, so one of the things that I think we are actually pushing hard is to revisit that law under the Communications and Multimedia Act. How can we actually license people who are serving nations? How do we then protect nations? Some countries have taken on what they call as a deeming license, which means anyone who serves one citizen of a country via online is deemed to be licensed in the country that the citizen is in. Okay, so that way it's kind of a hook. It's not perfect, but at the very least, the law actually has an ability to reach out to those who are serving nations out of Malaysia. So that's something that we would like to see.
It's a very jurisdictional issue, right?
Yeah.
We have one question. Nurul is asking, what are the simple steps we can do to develop a security culture in the organization, especially amongst non-technical people, beyond just awareness training? I think, Murali, can you answer that? Can you take this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the traditional way of improving awareness and education needs to definitely change, and we've taken steps as well. I think the traditional approach has been when people don't complete like an e-learning, for example. We always call them out, right? Report them to the line manager. And I think what we need to change is rather than penalize people for just bad security behavior, we also incentivize good security behavior, right? Because that will motivate people to actually behave in the manner they're supposed to if you actually incentivize it. And you can do simple things like building league tables on which is the best performing department in terms of security awareness and culture. Definitely something like making a lot of organizations have mandatory e-learning, which is largely centered around code of conduct and ethics, to extend that to cybersecurity and make that mandatory, and also try and look at embedding those into people's job objectives. So these are some of the ways to do it, but I think definitely moving away from just penalizing bad behavior but incentivizing good behavior is definitely a positive step forward, and you can see the culture change with that.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Fadullah, back to you. Kevin has this question. I'm not sure if I understand correctly, so I'm going to paraphrase the question. How does Malaysia plan to juggle between cross-border data sharing benefits versus security? Right, a lot of services, like you brought up, the whole issue of jurisdictions and all that. So how does Malaysia plan to juggle and the challenges between...
I think that for that question, I doubt any country actually has an answer. All right. Okay. But certainly we have to balance. There's a lot of benefit on cross-border data sharing. Nobody's going to say no to that. Okay. But at the same time, the data that we are sharing belongs to someone. And that someone happens to be it an organization or an individual in the country. Now, how do we then protect that? Okay. So therefore, when you look at from that angle, there is always a need to make sure that there is a form of protection by way of law. And like in all laws, it always stops at the border. Okay, so there will be two levels of, if you want, approach that Malaysia should undertake. One, what's within our border, we need to protect people within our border. Number one. Number two, while we acknowledge that the cross-data sharing is important, there will always be a G2G arrangement between countries. Okay, and therefore, again, you have the trade agreements that we all have, and invariably, the trade agreements will take into account data sharing, because that would probably be the way that most economies will go towards in the future.
Okay, thank you. Got one final question, I guess, because it's, time's up. So this one I'm going to paraphrase because it's a long question. And I think this one goes to MCMC, but our friend from a bit from Axiata probably wants to add in. A lot of questions. I mean, going back to, again, scam calls coming in. There are unauthorized messages that come in. People block them or complain about them. The numbers we know belong to a scammer. But share from our audience asks, why isn't the network operators doing something more? Why are these numbers still in circulation? Why are these people allowed to make calls? From MCMC and say, how can we stop this? And what do network operators need to do? And then Amit, you can answer about what you guys are doing. Dr. Fadullah first.
Okay, I think what is most important is this. Okay, people assume that phone numbers are the purview of the cellular operators. Okay, they are not. Many of us are quite happy to give our data to other organizations. I'll give you an example. I go down to a supermarket and suddenly they say, okay, you spend this amount of money. Would you like to enter a contest because you could win a Tesla? Yay, I'll put in all my information there and I wouldn't know what happens to that information. Okay, so, and within the information, there will be phone numbers. So one, we are quite happy to give our numbers away, and therefore that gives us, that provides room for people to use that data to scam. Second, there is also a problem with regards to prepaid data registration. Okay, I think the news today, I think for the last couple of days, has focused on the efforts done by the Nation Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, where telco employees together in cahoots with others have actually found a way to get numbers. And at the same time, the way prepaid numbers are being registered too has been lax to some extent, and therefore we are also taking enforcement. So again, like I said, the problem of numbers do not just stem from one source, it is from a variety of sources. And what I would advise to people, number one, if you don't recognize the number, don't respond. Okay, and if these numbers are being used on platforms such as WhatsApp or Telegram, if you do not know them, just block. Okay, and if something gets through to you, then certainly do not follow what they ask you to do. Okay, as a bit certainly. All right, so don't be so gullible. And last but not least, do make a police report. Okay, so that when you have the data of reports, it allows the authorities to actually undertake investigation. Because without a report, by law, no enforcement agency can undertake any further investigation.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add to that?
I think you've covered most of the points. The one point that I would add again to this is this challenge is not just in Malaysia. I mean, if you're following the telco developments, even in US, with even most advanced spam blocking, even there was a strict guidance coming from FTC, and they're still having this issue. Simply because, as the chairman rightly pointed out, some of the issues stem out from some of the platforms that are global platforms, social media platforms that have been compromised historically. And that data is easily available to anybody in the public, actually. So for me as a scammer, to get your details today is very, very easy. I mean, if you can just go to a simple website called Have I Been Pawned, put in your email address, it'll immediately tell you whether you've been compromised or not. And, you know, I can share with my personal story here. It's really scary. My 13-year-old daughter knows this website. She put my private email address and says, Daddy, you've been hacked. So you are the cybersecurity expert. How did you get hacked? And then I said to her, okay, you know, why don't you go down and see what happened? And obviously, I'm not going to mention the social media companies, but those companies were compromised. And unfortunately, I was part of that social media professional network. And so my details, no matter what I do in my personal life, were compromised too. So I think there is an element of that. And of course, there's an element of things that we got to fix. And we're working tirelessly on fixing that too. So I think it's not one simple answer. And I think there's a combination of collaboration between ourselves, the regulators, the technology providers to sort these issues out. But as you should be aware that a lot of the times regulation is not always the answer because the scammers obviously are more creative and can move at a faster pace than regulation can ever. So if we are thinking that regulation is answer to all your problems, then I think it's to me personally, it's not the way you should look at it. So I think I'll pause there, but hopefully that gives some context.
Okay, thank you. We have just one last question, Dan, and this one's for you, Murari, from Kochi. What has Standard Chartered done to assure stakeholders within the bank and Bank Negara that moving to the cloud does not mean increasing the risk for cybersecurity attacks or data loss? And what about the question of data sovereignty?
Yeah, so I think we've done a lot, but in the interest of time, I think the important thing is that firstly, I think any organization should have a clear sort of strategy around cloud adoption. What exactly they're moving to the cloud, and my recommendation would be take baby steps in that. Potentially, not moving business critical systems or those which hold, for example, PII data for a start. So take baby steps. So potentially, leverage more infrastructure or platforms for development or development environments first. So I think that needs to be very clear in terms of what exactly is the organization's cloud adoption strategy. In terms of managing the risks and the compliance aspects of it, I think one thing everyone needs to be very clear of. If you were to go and partner with someone like an AWS or Azure or GCP or Google Cloud Platform, it is a shared responsibility model, right? Moving stuff to the cloud doesn't mean the cloud provider takes on full responsibility for security. And a lot of these providers have very clear indication of what the responsibilities they take on and what the organization needs to take on. So I think understanding those responsibilities is very clear. We also have in place that before anything gets onboarded to the cloud, and I'm talking, all flavors of cloud, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform, or even software as a service, it goes through an extremely robust cloud governance process and onboarding process to assess not only the security risks, but also the legal and compliance risks as well. So that process cannot be bypassed and has to be followed. And every cloud adoption we go through has to go through that process. So I think putting that in place was very important. And also doing a constant survey of the landscape to see, because this is the enforcement and compliance bit, to ensure that no one has bypassed the process and actually gone and signed up with a software as a service, for example, in that sense. So I think that's really that. I think when it comes to data sovereignty, I think, when you're going and hosting data in the cloud, you have to be very clear on where exactly, a lot of the cloud providers have multiple data hosting locations. So you need to ask the question when you're onboarding, where exactly is my data being stored, right? Because where the relationship may be managed from, say, for example, Malaysia, so the relationship manager might be there, but your data might actually be in a data center somewhere else. And on that also, I mean, besides where the data is being hosted, a lot of cloud providers actually sign on with other partners to deliver services to them. So you move from third party to what I consider fourth party relationships. So even when you find out where the data is being stored, ask the question, are you working with another partner? Because remember, your legal relationship is directly with the cloud provider, and you got to ensure that your legal rights extend to beyond the third party. It's sometimes challenging in negotiations. So these are the kind of things you need to go in eyes wide open with any sort of arrangements, ask the questions up front, put in a very strong governance and onboarding process. And more importantly, I would say, define what that cloud adoption strategy is and take what I consider baby steps to fully understand what you're signing up for before you start moving production data workloads or, systems which host personal data, onto the cloud.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to give, since Murari, you had the last word in, I'm going to give an opportunity to Abid and Dr. Fadlullah here. Abid, would you like to just sum up or?
No, I think you have, thank you for the opportunity, first of all, and thank you for everybody joining us on a call. If you have anything else, our website has all the information that you need. You can personally reach out to me with any Aziata or cybersecurity related matters. Happy to help. Stay safe, and let's keep cyber safe too, and COVID pandemic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Fadlullah, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you all. Only one piece of advice: stay safe online, stay safe offline.
Yes, thank you. That's a good way to sign off. So I'm not going to say anything else. Bye, gentlemen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have enjoyed the opening power panel. What a way to kick off our session. Thank you so much, Asuhan, Abid, Dr. Fadullah, and Murari for such a clear and insightful discussion around this topic. It was most definitely a pleasure to hear that. We are entering the first thematic track of the day, which is our financial track powered by Boston Consulting Group. And to open the session, our keynote speaker will be guiding the financial institutions to navigate through COVID-19 storms and how they can capture new opportunities amid challenging digital disruption. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Managing Director and Partner of Boston Consulting Group, Mr. Sumit Kumar.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining on this session with us today. So I'm going to talk about how financial institutions are facing challenges in this COVID era and what will it take for us to really succeed post this era, right? And when I had this discussion with many executives from banking and insurance companies, it always reminds me of this very interesting thing which happened in the story of Lord of the Rings, right? Where Frodo and Gandalf talk about the fact that why is it happening now? Why is the world so difficult at this point of time? And that's what most of the bank executives and CEOs tell me, right? That why is it happening to us? Why is the world changing so dramatically? And what we tell to all of them and what we tell to ourselves is, look, we can't decide what happens to people at what point of time, right? That's all destiny and fate. In the end, we need to decide what we do with the time and how does it actually make the best for us, right? So that's kind of the whole setting that I want to talk today to you guys about how will the world be after COVID and what banks and financial institutions should do. So today I'm going to talk to you guys three things, right? So first talk a little bit about how is COVID really impacting our consumers and economy and what does it mean in terms of some of the consumer trends, especially in the banking and the financial services industry. Second is what we believe could be winning plays in the new world going forward. And then finally, talk a bit about what does it take for organizations to really execute these plays and win. So maybe first starting with, what's happening to the world today, right? So these are some numbers, and I'm sure many of you guys have seen some of this, right? But the fact is COVID has severely impacted our economy and our consumer, right? If you really look at the GDP forecast, they're expected to be somewhere between -3.5% to -5.5%. The unemployment rates are hitting at 4.6%. And with the most recent wave, we expect close to 25% of SMEs actually close down. And that's not really good for the economy, right? But look, the Malaysian consumer remains optimistic. I mean, in a recent survey that we actually did to the consumer, 35% of them feel that the economy will be better next year, right? And there is still hope in the economy. There is still hope in the consumer that things will change, which is kind of very, very good news for we as financial institutions, right? Now, if I really look at some of the trends that is actually impacting the new normal in Malaysia and what will happen post-COVID, some of them are very interesting and will have very, very huge implications to bank, right? So on general consumer trends, 4 things are really emerging out, right? The first thing is social distancing, right? We are learning to do business by ensuring we are distant to each other, right? And even when we meet, we want it to be very, very efficient, right? Be it an affluent banker who meets his RM, he needs to be efficient and to the point, or be it to someone who is selling contact lenses in a store, who needs to be very clear on what he's trying to sell and what he needs to offer to the customer. The second and the most important thing here is the time spent by consumers online. I mean, in the previous world, physical distribution and time spent on the physical infrastructure was super high. Today, we have more than 92% of consumers actually spending time online to search things before they buy. Now, that is tremendous. The amount of aggregate time spent by consumers online has gone up by 30 to 40%, and that completely presents a new opportunity for different industries to really tap their consumers. The third important thing is work from home, right? And work from home is not just something which is happening now. We believe it's going to be a norm going forward, right? For many, many industries. If you look at some of the US market, right? I mean, Facebook has already announced that it's going to continue work from home for a couple of years. Apple has done that. Also, lots of companies in Malaysia are looking for that and implementing that going forward, right? So that will have their own implications on how organizations actually work with different consumers. And finally, the spend, right? If you really look at the spend mix, people are going back to basics. People are spending on health. People are spending on good food. People are spending on nutrition. And the spending on more things which are what we call discretionary is going down. If you look in the banking world, what's happening there, right? A big move away from physical channel to digital channels. We've actually seen branch footfall drop dramatically and digital channels go up. The cashless payment is on a rise. If you really ask customers where are they going to actually spend their money on financial products, it's much more towards savings, insurance, and wealth management. Now, that's actually very interesting play because that helps banks to think about more fee-based income. But it's also tough because if you have lower loans, your interest margins will go down and your income will go down, right? So banks really need to readjust and think, what do they do in this environment where loans are going to go down and there is much more demand on wealth and insurance-based products. And it's not just the consumer banking which is impacted. I mean, even on the business banking side, we see huge changes, right? There is a big restructuring in the demand and the risk profile of different industries are changing. While some industries are really doing well, others like oil and gas, recreation, travel have really been impacted, right? So as we think of lending to some of these companies, we really need to be careful. What's the perspective on different industries going forward? And hence, where do we really need to emphasize? And just to share some numbers for us, which are very, very relevant for us in the Malaysian context, right? We actually see 37% of consumers actually shifting from branch to digital. There's a big question that will this footfall ever come back, right? And at least our consumer surveys says majority of them are not going to come back, right? So you'll actually have lots and lots of branches with no people. 45% of people actually are new to online banking, right? So really people are adopting the whole online banking and digital financial services and getting used to it. And some of them are also older generation people who were not open to this before. If you really look at consumer loans, the retail loans, we actually see in the near term, there has to be a close to 30% cut in terms of what people are going to take up. Now, this will have huge impact on NIMs. 15% of consumers actually feel that they are going to actually spend much more on investments and insurance. Big opportunity for banks. The question is, how do we materialize on it, right? Because we are pretty much known in the industry to be product pushers, and we don't really advise customers. That's the perception, at least, the consumer has about different financial institutions, right? So we really need to think through how do we win in the space, given the consumer is going to actually spend a lot more. If you look at the SME space, right, more than 25% of SMEs actually now prefer to interact digitally. They are very, very comfortable. In fact, they're looking for players who can give them loan remotely, who can actually manage their cash management remotely, right? So they themselves are very open to digital, right? And then the last point is delinquency and loans. I mean, the industry is going to see way higher delinquencies and loans, right? I mean, you had moratoriums and you've not seen the real impact of it. But the reality is that delinquency and NPL numbers are going to go up. I mean, if you look at China, it went up to 4 times, right? So there will be a huge impact on that, and managing risk is going to be a big challenge in the coming times, right? Now, the way we think about this, right, and I think, we as BCG actually talk to a lot of companies and say, look, what do you do in this situation, right? And I think we see 2 types of companies which in this situation, right, and how they deal with it. While majority of companies actually see a drop in their margins and a drop in their sales, and that's 44% of them, and that's historical data. If you look at all historical downturns which have happened since 1986, this is the number, right? More than half the companies are not able to manage both growth in margin and sales. But there are companies, and 14% of them, which actually completely reinvent the business model and drive both sales and margins in tough times. And I think for us, what's important is, as organizations, how do we think of doing this? How do we become a part of that 14% and not a part of that 44% where there's a value destruction happening? And past has shown that companies have done like this, and we strongly believe that financial institutions have the ability to do this, and they can really succeed in this. Now, if you really think about this, that what does it take to be this top 14%, right? How do we really win in this market in times ahead, right? And I think as BCG, what we think is there are 5 elements here, and later I will go into detail of some of them. But it's really, you start with credit, right? Really start to how do you manage your risk and credit, and using data and analytics to do it, right? And I think most of you guys sitting here in the audience, I'm sure you're already doing it. In fact, this was the first thing which most of the banks and FIs took, in April last year. How do you really manage your credit? And in fact, I was talking to one of the CEOs, and he said, look, we have really tightened it. Our revenue is down, but our NPL will be managed. And the question I have for them is, have we actually tightened it too much? Are we really thinking about managing credit and growth? And I think in most cases, we have actually tightened credit way more than what is required. I think the second important lens here is the whole lens of cost, right? And I think after you've managed credit, there is a lens of cost. And again, a lot of banks are already, and FIs are already doing it, right? They're doing digitization, they're doing budget cuts. I think the big question that we have for the audience and for all of you is, how much of it are you actually doing in a structural manner, which is aligned with what the consumer of tomorrow is going to be? If the consumer in tomorrow is not going to come to the branches, is going to expect much more from banks and FIs in terms of how RMs interact with them, is going to expect much more digital enablement. Are we really thinking about that, or are we just cutting costs for the sake of it, right? And we'll look through some of the things on how we believe FIs need to think about this, right? And then the third and the most important thing, and I think what I've heard with most of my clients is, look, this one is right now not a priority, right? I mean, people are very much busy in credit and cost, but people have forgotten revenue, right? And I think this is the best time for us to really think about, look, how do you leapfrog in terms of revenue acceleration? And there, how do you use data? How do you use ecosystems? How do you enable your sales team? How do you actually use so much of data which is floating around in the whole online world to really drive revenue, right? And that is how a lot of banks are not doing it. Most of it are very focused on credit and cost. While they're important, it's important to build a sustainable cost advantage and start really thinking about revenue. Today, I will talk in deep about 3 of these things, right? So one, I will talk about the whole revenue acceleration aspect of moving from product to solutions using value chains and ecosystems. I will also talk about how do you use analytics to drive hyper-personalization and really drive average product holding and price realization. And then I will also talk about in terms of cost. How do you really think of the future distribution, which not only gives you cost, but also helps you win the customer, right? So let's go about this one by one, right? So let me talk a bit about the whole movement from product to the solution mindset. And how do you do that, right? So let me just explain you with a simple example, right? I mean, today if I go and ask a bank, how are you really being customer-centric? How are you really thinking about solutions? People will say, look, I'm actually creating mortgages for different segments of my customer. I have a mortgage for students. I may have a mortgage for young graduates. I may have a mortgage for affordable housing. But the reality is, we as consumers are not shopping for mortgage in the market. We're actually shopping for buying a home. And that shopping starts way earlier than when you actually think of the mortgage, right? When a student graduates, he starts to think, look, I want to buy a home 10 years later. How do I need to save for it? How much do I need to save? I want a home in this place. What will the price of home be 10 years later? Then when he's actually ready to actually buy, then he starts to search, where should I buy, right? Is this a good price? Am I actually paying too much? Who is the right real estate agent? What do I need to look in the house? How do I not get cheated by a developer, right? So many things go in. And then comes the whole fact of the mortgage. But life doesn't get over there, right? After you have done your mortgage process, then there is the whole point of, I need to move into my house. I need to settle down. I need to have a society to engage. Maybe rates are going down. I need to refinance. Maybe I need to actually use my house to actually get more money out of it. So the journey is pretty long and end to end. But most of the banks today are really focusing on the mortgage part, right? And that's where I think banks and FIs are not seeing the opportunity. And we actually believe if you really need to stand out of the pack in the new normal, you need to really think out of the pack, right? Because look, in the end, if you take the example of home loan and lending, the market is going to be tougher, right? And if you're going to just compete on the mortgage product, which means you're competing on rate, it's not easy to win, right? You'll only end up cutting margins. But if you're really competing on the end-to-end home ownership proposition, that's where things will be different. And that's what I feel that FIs need to think. And be it a home solution, be it a mobility solution to get a car, be it a solution to help your dream to open your business, be it a solution to save, be it a solution to ensure your future, be it a solution to actually have a happy retirement, right? But really thinking through end to end is where we really want everyone to focus on and where we really want people to actually start building solutions for. Now, some banks and some FIs tell us, look, we are already doing it. We are doing amazing UI, UX. We are building very nice kind of interfaces, and we have some of that. If you look at Malaysia, lots of people are launching lots of new apps and people are claiming, oh, this is amazing. I have a great customer journey. It looks beautiful. It's easy. But the reality is the look and feel of the journey is just the tip of the iceberg. And where most FIs get it wrong is what lies beneath. You can make an amazing process where you can actually say, look, I'm applying for a credit card online. But the reality is after applying, you want the customer to send 5 documents, you have to have him call 7 times, you can't give him what he's approved for, and the whole process is very, very painful. It doesn't help. And that's why as you move from the whole product to solution, you need to completely fix the lower part of the iceberg, right? Your whole technology and data linkage, your agile delivery. Your entire end-to-end process needs to be straight through. You need to really change the way your employees think and operate, right? And unless you do that, just a beautiful UI, UX becomes stale in 3 months. I know a lot of you have played Pokemon before, right? Today's digital world is pretty much like gaming, One game becomes popular for 3 months and people forget it. And that's the reality of the industry going forward, right? If you are just someone who's going to just think about the front end, people will come to you, but people will forget you very soon. So we really need to think about the whole thing end to end and really fix both the front and back to really actually win in the space, right? And there is a lot of value in this. This is based on what we have seen other banks in the world do it, right? And it helps you in 5 dimensions. You will definitely see customer satisfaction go up, right, by 20 to 40 points. And we have seen that with our clients in Australia, in Europe, and even in Southeast Asia. Costs would go down by 15 to 25%. You actually develop capabilities, right? You're able to go to market quickly, your employees are happier, they feel that you're actually doing something better, and they feel, the job is way more exciting than it was yesterday. From a compliance perspective, the risk goes down because everything is digitized, automated, and system-driven. You're no longer dependent on hundreds of people to actually manage the whole compliance risk. And finally, on top of that, it comes with a top-line growth. So we really believe that if you actually harbor this journey of going from product to solutions, think end-to-end, there's a lot of benefit out there, right? Maybe I'll just go to the next example of whole distribution part, right? And this is something where it comes under the cost aspect, but it's very, very critical to actually make the consumers much more happy with us, right? And this picture just shows about what we feel the distribution of tomorrow will look like, right? On the left side, you see what the physical distribution will look like, right? So we believe the branches in future would actually be paperless, and it will be very much focused on advisory. Really, RM sitting out there and helping sell rather than doing services. And the physical ATM would look like something below. And this is a picture from an ATM in Indonesia for a bank, where you can do pretty much everything. You can go and open an account, actually prints an ATM card, it prints a credit card. If you want to apply for a loan, let's say even a home loan, right, you can actually pretty much put your documents, scan it, and get everything done end to end, right? And if you're stuck, activate the video conference and talk to the customer relationship guy, right? So you really don't need a human being. It's all fully automated, it's all predictable, and you know exactly what's happening because it's all integrated, right? And for the more complex products, be it wealth management, be it SME loans, we believe the world will move much more towards a virtual distribution, right? You have someone on the video conference where you could really see the face, in a background which seems like a bank, with agents who can actually do multiple skills 24/7 with the right tools to handle what you're doing and really serve you, right? So you don't need to go to the branch. You don't need to actually call a call center, right? You have very skilled people sitting in front of you on a screen and really solving all your issues and problems, right? And sending you stuff. In fact, we did a customer survey to really understand, how do consumers feel about this? And really even for the complex products like mortgage, wealth management, SME loan, close to 50% of consumers feel that, look, the world today is going to be much more either a hybrid model, which is face-to-face with RM with digital tools, or just RM with digital tools, right? So I think the dominance of face-to-face will go down, and we really need to build a hybrid model. And the reality is, if you look at institutions around us, we are very good in face-to-face. We are very good in self-service. But the hybrid model, nobody has mastered. If you really talk today to your banker, right, and you talk something to your RM, and then walk to the branch, see what happens. Your branch guy will never know what you talk to the RM, and vice versa. And that's what we call the hybrid model, where the physical, the digital, and the RM model all merge together, and you're all working in one seamless way. And I think how we feel the future of retail distribution in future will be three aspects, right? So really building your physical and virtual network, right? So as we showed through the whole physical, paperless, machine-based network, and the virtual network, which is much more a unified communication platform with video banking. On step 2, reinforced with the human factor, right? So really the RM will exist, but much more in a remote advisory with AI to support him. And then the third aspect is an orchestration, right? So that basically when you talk to a human or you actually look at a physical branch, it pretty much looks like very, very seamless, very orchestrated across channel, and it looks very, very, right product at right time and right servicing, right? So you don't feel like you're getting bounced off from one place to another place. And that's where we actually feel the power of the future distribution is going to be. And we really feel banks need to go after this, right? And this, again, it's a proven model. It's not that, it's something which will not deliver value. I mean, some banks have started to do it. Some FIs have started to do it. And you see many, many benefits, right? I mean, digital sales can go up by 20 to 40%. You see significant cost saving. In fact, one of the very interesting pilots we saw in some of the markets in Australia and Europe was people who actually started to do video banking, the people who tried it, 80% of them actually loved it so much that they just want to do that. And there's a very interesting study which was done by a US university, which said that close to 60% of human communication is based on body language when you look at that person's eyes, right? And hence, if a video banking can enable that, we really don't need so much of physical banking anymore, right? With the right person behind it, it's very much possible, right? And plus, you will actually see a huge improvement in your marketing ROI and your digital sales funnel will improve, right? So we really believe this is where the world will move, and this is how FIs need to think about from a distribution perspective. Now, shifting gears to the third part, right, which is the whole analytics for hyper-personalization, right? And I think now I want to spend a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about the art of possible and how we think about different stages here, right? So I think majority of legacy banks, today are in what we call a nascent stage, right? They have some kind of business rule. For example, in this month, I want to push a mortgage, so every customer who walks in and who has balance above 50,000 ringgit in his bank account, pushing a mortgage. Some of them even start to make some basic propensity model, which are univariate model which they are making, with some view on some of the variables. Most of these variables are refreshed once a month. So you really don't even know. Yesterday I called a call center and I complained, and today, an RM in the branch is saying, sir, why don't you actually buy a wealth product from me? Completely unaware that what happened yesterday. And most banks today are actually in this whole nascent stage, right? While a few of the banks have started to take lead and build some models, which we call in the evolving stage, where they're doing some kind of personalization, some kind of models are being built, They have micro segmentation, which means, they will have a segment of people, who are high income, live in a particular area, have particular kind of spending habit, right? So it's segments of people, maybe 100,000 people, maybe 1 million people, right? And they build models for those segments. And in terms of data, maybe some of them is, some of them could be daily data, some of them could be weekly data. But the real differentiator in this space is what the tech fins or the digital banks of the world are doing, or banks like Capital One, which actually invented analytics 10, 15 years back, right? Which is ingesting not just internal data but external data, pretty much real time, right? So when you go to a Facebook, when you go to a LinkedIn, when you go to a different Shopee, right? I mean, based on information which is both external and internal, they actually build features which are pretty much real time, run models, and offer things to customers on the channel of their choice. And if the customer doesn't take it, they use that feedback to readjust the model. So it's pretty much running all the time, adjusting all the time, pretty much using the entire power of infrastructure available today to hyper-personalize the experience. And that is where the money is. I mean, we've seen banks actually create more than 10% additional revenue through hyper-personalization. I mean, if you look at what Alibaba does in China, if you look at what M-Bank did in Poland, if you look at some of the banks in India, what they're doing, if you look at what Capital One does in US, they're all in the space of mature hyper-personalization and how they are really generating value out of it, right? And what lies at the core of this hyper-personalization? It's pretty much the customer DNA, right? 5 things as I talked about. One, basic customer demographic information. When was he born? Where does he live? So demographic information. Second is his information regarding internal data, right? What products he owns, what has he applied, what kind of transactions he's made. Third is external data, right? Where is he spending his time online? If there is what does his behavior look like? What is he doing with the competitor, right? How much is his wealth growing? Fourth is around insights which are generated from 1, 2, and 3, right? In terms of, is his balance going up, balance going down? I look like from my model says he's going to get married, he's going to have a child. And then based on that, you throw out some kind of an offer. And then the fifth part comes, which is feedback, right? Which most of the organizations forget. What did he do when I sent an offer to him, right? I may have sent an offer, he did not accept it. Do I take that into account when I actually send him the next offer? I would tell you, 99.99% of organizations don't do that. They keep sending the same guy the same thing. They never take the power of the information, which when you actually say, when a customer says no to something, right? And the last point I want to make on here, right? Look, I think it's very powerful to use analytics, right? And you can get a lot of value out of it. The reality is only 1 in 10 companies really make money out of analytics, right? And the reason for that is very, very simple. Everybody thinks analytics is about data, about technology, about algorithm, and that is what they do. But 70% of value is in business transformation. I can create the best model to create the best lead for my SME RM to go and sell wealth to the owner of the SME. But I have not fixed the KPI model. If I don't have a way to track the leads, if I don't have a right product for him to come in, if I don't train the RM properly, this is not going to happen. And that's where the problem is. Most FIs focus on hiring the best quality of data scientists, fixing the technology and data, but they're not thinking about the business transformation. They're not thinking about the processes, and the outcome is very clear, right? People are not able to monetize value out of it. And that's something we want FIs to realize and really start rethinking about. Now, we talked about the 3 of the plays, right? And there are many, many more. And I think in the interest of time, maybe just shift gears to talk a little bit about how do you really execute this, right? And after my session, we'll have my colleague Ching Fong actually run through a panel session to go into more details on these enablements and get the view of the panel on that. But at the heart of it, we have 5 different elements which needs to come in place when you have to execute this, right? It's the new ways of working, it's bringing the live talent, it's setting up your data, it's setting up your technology and putting in place the partnerships, right? And it sounds easy, but doing all this is very, very difficult. And we'll see all of that in the subsequent session. We will talk about the challenges. But if you do this, this is how it helps you win, right? And I want to end my session with this slide, right? And this, it was a very famous quote which we heard in April earlier of this year, right? Look, each of you guys really want to win in this market. You really want to go and defeat your next competitor, right? The reality is when the market is high, when things are good, it's very difficult to beat others, right? As you read here, it's a tough time. The market is not easy. It's not going to be easy for anyone out there, right? And this is the time for you to take charge. This is the time for you to really differentiate from your competition and win. Because in the end, in a sunny weather, you cannot overtake 15 cars. It can only be happen when it's raining. So thank you a lot, audience, for listening me out, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Sumit. It was indeed a very insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, to complement the financial track, we are joined by a great panel lineup of industry-leading financial and fintech subject matter experts and practitioners. We are honored to be in the presence of Afzal Abdul Rahman, the Chief Digital Technology Officer of Employees Provident Fund, EPF. Afzal has 22 years of tech experience in the financial services and oil and gas industry. Our second guest panelist is Dawn Lai, the Chief Executive Officer of Experian Information Services Malaysia, who has over 20 years of experience navigating the credit information industry. Also joining the panel is Robin Lee, the CEO and co-founder of Hello Gold, a Sharia-compliant fintech focused on creating financial products for underserved and unbanked in emerging markets. Next, our special guest is Nur Hizam Kadir, a Vice President of MDEC, currently oversees new growth areas with key emphasis on fintech and Islamic digital economy. And our panel moderator, CF Ong, who is a Managing Director and Senior Partner of Boston Consulting Group. He leads digital BCG in Southeast Asia and is a core member of the financial institution practice. This is an absolutely interesting mix of panelists from key areas of financial services and also fintech. Okay, without further ado, the panel is getting ready to go, so please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a short while.
Good morning to all of you joining us digitally. This is a great way to demonstrate the power of digital technology where we can still meet digitally during CMCO. Now, for all of us here in the panel, as we can see, we are all together physically. I think this really shows the commitment of the panelists to ensure that we have a live discussion with each other today to share our insight with you. As you saw earlier, my partner shared with you some of the critical elements of how to have successful digital transformation. New way of working, talent, data, technology, and partnership. Now, what we like to do is to talk about the how to make sure that we deliver against these elements. And why is how so important? Because from our point of view, the urgency to act is now. Pre-COVID, the investor, when BCG did a research with them, they said the key agenda for any organization, especially financial institution, is to embark on digital transformation. Post-COVID, we did a study and found that financial institution, 80% of the financial institution management team saw that the key agenda is on digital transformation. So it is important that we now talk about how to successfully execute such digital transformation. Now, to do that, we have a good mix of panelists today. We have individuals that are from developmental agencies like MDEC. We have a startup like from Hello Gold. We have incumbent financial institutions like EPF, and we also have a service provider from Experian. So let's now start our panelist discussion. Let me invite each of the panelist members to basically start off by describing how does digital and data means to your organization. maybe we'll start off from your side.
Thank you. What digital and data means to my organization. We are at MDAC, we're a government agency. Digital means economic activities coming from, of course, the public sector, the private sector, of course, the citizens themselves, in terms of how these digital activities can contribute to Malaysia's economy. To do that, we need to have proper measurements, and that's where data management comes in, right? In ensuring that the efforts that we put in would be able to be justifiable in creating impact for the country. As of now, digital economy, ICT consumption and supply contributes to 19.1% of Malaysia's GDP. And that's a great milestone. And it wouldn't have been achieved, this particular milestone, if digital and data managements are not being put into priority.
Thank you, Hizam. Robin?
So for Hello Gold, we're at the fintech startup. The reason why digitalization is important for us is our mandate. Our mandate, our objective is to create financial products for the underserved and the unbanked in the emerging markets. So in this sense, we look at our solution to create accessibility, affordability, and also suitability. Right? And digitalization enables us to accelerate accessibility to the last mile, to our customers at the end point. And then what we also need to do is make sure it's affordable. Digitalization of financial products enables us to cut down the ticket sizes so that our customers can afford to invest, start to invest their hard-earned savings. So from that standpoint, digitalization is key to everything we did. When it comes to data, once we've got the product and we have started to create a customer base, we look at data on a regular basis, practically on a daily basis, to see consumer behavior, to figure out what we need to do to basically create customized products for our customers. So as an example, when we first started, people just buy and sell gold whenever they wanted. Then when we saw the usual traction of our customers, what we then did was to create a financial product to enable them to save on a monthly basis without having the need to put in more money. And it was automated through a direct debit from the banking system. And that's an example of very simple use of data to deliver to the customers something that they would find useful.
Thank you, Robin. Afzal? Yeah.
All right. So digital and data within the EPF context. EPF, our vision is obviously to be able to ensure that our members have a better future. And that includes having adequate wealth, having health, but also having the right wealth and health to be able to lead a meaningful life. And I think when we look at digital, we want to ensure that we are an institution that not only looks after the social well-being, that we continue to ensure that we have and we embrace digital technologies to be able to continuously provide relevant products and services and advisory to our members in terms of achieving our vision, but fundamentally ensuring that we continue to be engaged, that we continue to be relevant to our member base. And I think if you look at the demographics of our member base today, we've got about 14.8 million members. It cuts across 5 distinct generations, all the way from baby boomers to Gen Ys and Gen Zs. And increasingly, the member base made up of the demographics that are very technical, they're very technology savvy, they demand exceptional customer experience, they demand products and services that are very convenient and very relevant to their needs. And we feel that digital is essentially about the ability for us to be able to not only just implement technology and solutions, but really to be able to embrace technology capabilities that are out there today to be able to achieve our vision. And I think a central part of that strategy is obviously having the right data in place. I think we are in a position where whatever decision we make when it comes to either providing products or services or coming up with policies for our members, a lot of those decisions require us to have really meaningful data to work on in order for us to be able to formulate the right strategies and policies and intervention in place. So that's our understanding of digital and data.
Got it. Thank you, Afzal. Don?
Yeah. For us, right, Experian, we are a global technology company, and we are also the market leader in terms of data and analytics. If you look at it, not many organizations in the world can claim leading position in both data and analytics. And in Malaysia, we have a data business, the one that which I'm actually leading. And we work across with, multiple different agencies, be it from government, be it from private data partners in terms of actually building in terms of data assets. We are also support financial services sector as our customer, be it from the banks, fintech, even payment company, or even many more other institutions, by actually providing a comprehensive suite of services, be it from data, decisioning solutions. One of the unique things that we are able to do is that not just by providing data, we are embedding the data through a digital way. Most of the data services that we provide to clients is either through a web portal or is in a data format that it can deliver through API. People can consume the information very easily. And with that, that definitely helps them to make a faster and automate the so-called decision. The decision making in terms of how do they want to actually give up lending, how do they want to onboard their customer. Definitely we see in across the last couple of years, a lot more, I think, as what CF has mentioned, the journey, the digitalization journey has kickstarted, and a lot more such demand has come in. And a lot of organization is looking at how do they onboard customer digitally, how do they authenticate customer on that basis. And I would say from experience standpoint, we do have the data. Data is part of the core of our asset. And that is how we are able to help. And by applying the analytics capabilities that we have, we are able to help people to actually tailor and actually making sure that reach out to the right target group. Yeah, I would say that would summarize in terms of how data and digitals mean to the experience organization. Yeah.
Speaking of data, it's actually a very good segue. First, I must commend the conference title on how we have positioned digital and data side by side. From my point of view, it's extremely important to me. There's no digital journey without a data journey. And since we are in a financial institution segment, data is extremely important for that financial institution, given that we are, after all, dealing with virtual goods. We're really dealing with ones and zero. Money can be transferred virtually. Now, with that, we have seen companies that really harness the data to do many things that Don spoke about, right? To do credit underwriting. Many of them also do a lot around helping them to invest better, right? Using big amount of big data. Some are even using that to help them to create stronger customer intimacy and also improve their internal operation. So speaking of that, how I would like to invite the panelist members, how they have seen successful organizations and their respective organization really harness data to win in this digital world.
Well, I can go.
Yeah, anyone, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think we've won yet. So I think we are in progress as a startup. But we use data, as I mentioned earlier, on a daily basis, and we use data to figure out better ways to serve our customers. And our customers within the Malaysian context are people that earn up to about 4,000 to 5,000 ringgit a month. So it's very important that they kind of, in some ways, optimize what they can save, because for a lot of folks, cash, particularly these days, is a scarce resource. So I talked about earlier this, what we call the Smart Saver program, where basically, because we saw that a number of our customers were buying gold on a regular basis, we wanted to remove friction from our standpoint and also make it more convenient for them in an affordable way. So for us, what we then did was that we tracked it. We then tested it in a pilot to see if we gave a product that automated the process so they don't have to remember every month to put money in, whether that would work. And we then invest the gold on a daily basis, in our case, at the lowest price of the day. And we struck it at 30 ringgit. And that product has grown at 10% per month over the last 18 months, which is, for us, pretty astounding. But that's just a very simple way of just looking at the data internally. And before I just finish, the flip side to that is that we're living in a world where there's data overload. So you have internal data, which is contained, but for tech startups with no customers trying to bring on board customers, you have external data from Facebook, from Google, etc. And the amount of metrics that you can look at and try to make sense of that is actually very, very challenging. And oftentimes it's a full-time job just to figure out which one is meaningful and which one is meaningless and how to use it.
I just want to add to what Robin said with regards to providing affordable and accessible solutions, especially to the underserved market. One of the tasks that MDEC undertakes in spearheading digital economy is to push digital and financial inclusion. Usage of non-conventional data. You're targeting Machikia, who may not have credit history. And chances for Machikia to have a micro financing to be approved by financial institutions would probably be very low. And this is where fintech companies come in. And it's very encouraging to see different assets of data, social media usage, e-commerce patterns, phone usage are being used, and data that being delivered by experience actually in helping to do that validations, that KYC. This is very encouraging because it's targeting those people who were not served before, but now they are able to apply and obtain these financial services digitally because of the availability of different sets of data.
Yeah, and CF, if I may, I just want to take it on a bit further to what Hizam has said. I think where we're at, if you look at the EPF, again, 14.8 million members, and each of them, when we looked at some of the data that we have in the organization, it's quite apparent that a lot of them are actually within what we call as our basic savings ratio. So they don't have adequate savings to cater for their post-retirement, and we find that to be a concern. I think that's where we've initiated this data for good strategy. So this is where we're looking at how can we leverage data, and that's data that's not only limited to what's available within EPF, but also data that could potentially be consumed from our other partners, our other agencies, our other organizations, and really formulate the right policies, the right intervention, the right assistance that we can provide to our members so they can make the right decision. So if a member comes to us and we detect, for example, that the member is probably going to a situation where he or she is over leveraged, in terms of taking credit, additional credit and whatnot. So there's opportunities for us to then provide, an independent advisory to the member, a bit of intervention, and be able to then assist the member with making the right decisions. And we think, therefore, it's quite important for us to have the right objective and vision for the data and that we want to leverage on. But ultimately being able to use the data that we have to formulate, again, the right interventions, the right objectives, and so on.
Yeah, actually, I just want to add on to what Hizam has mentioned in terms of financial inclusions and servicing the underserved or underbanked group, right? For Experian, one of our key visions is also to build this whole alternative data ecosystem. If you look at from Malaysia perspective, right, those that with really former banking history that is under Bank Negara Secrets, that is only about, in terms of individual wise, it's only about 11 million or 12 million active individual who has borrowing. But if you look at the bankable group of populations of Malaysia, it's about 20 million or maybe 18 to 20 million, right? So there are large segment of individuals that there is no banking former history. At this point, when these people go to the banks to apply a loan, as I think many countries, markets that you can see, that apply the same for Malaysia. If you have no credit history, generally the banks cannot lend to you because they do not know what kind of behavior you are. So on that basis, part of the thing I would say that in the last couple of years, Experian has undertaken in terms of build an overall data ecosystem by working across different agencies, from the government agency, from even data partners like people like telco, payment gateway, and even if you talk about utilities, non-banks lender, which is actually not in the former banking history, that helps to connect in terms of the data. And we are regulated entities. We are given a license to operate as a credit reporting agency. So we are in the best place in terms of collecting the information and supporting financial services provider, not just the bank, or be it for the fintech or those non-bank lender, in terms of giving them a 360 view of their customer, because that itself definitely would actually helps individual or small businesses to gain access to credit.
Okay, thank you, panelist member. You know, there's this saying that the data is the new oil. Well, I like to think, I also hear other people say that data is actually a new air, right? In a sense, because oil is finite, data is not finite, it's ever increasing. And also based on what you say, yes, sometimes the air can be a bit polluted, we need to clean that up, but air can be combined. But ultimately, if you do that well, air, like data, can really bring new life, right, to underserved markets. So I think that's great to see all the data initiative that are pushing. Now let's switch gear to talk about technology, right? Clearly you can't talk digital without thinking technology. And when I say technology, it's really IT, right? The information technology. And that, as you know, is a evolving space as well, right? There's a lot of new technology evolution, microservices, containerization, cloud, of course, right? And yes, one does need to keep up with the technology to make sure that your technology continuously remain nimble to be able to capture the digital opportunity. So coming from your perspective, both your organization and what you have seen, how do you think the whole technology should be looked at, right? What are some of the winning components of the technology stack that one must have?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not a tech guy, but I think one of the biggest challenges of figuring out what your technology strategy is that there's overwhelming choice between existing platforms, services, and emerging platforms and services. And it's truly overwhelming. And I'd say even before, there is no best in class. I think the best in class is a function of what it is that you want to do and what is strategically important for you. So from the Hello Gold perspective, when we first started, we're a startup. We start with zero. Our objective in the first 12 months was to get off the ground as quickly as possible. So we chose a technology stack for that, and we really didn't care about much else. And we built for that with, I guess, on the back of our mind that at some point in time, next 2 or 3 years, we have to rebuild. So I think for a lot of organizations, depending on how sophisticated you are, whether you have the benefit of a chief digital transformation officer, you either have to think about all these things and really figure this thing out, or you're going to have to experiment. But there is no right one answer. I think that it's a function of the size, whether you have certainty in direction or whether you need to test and you may have to change. And that's the great and dangerous thing about it. You can't really go wrong, but you can also badly go wrong.
Right. Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's really about technology that gives you that agility and flexibility to run at the pace of business, right? So that's one angle. The other angle is probably perhaps around a longer strategic direction, whether ecosystems is an important aspect or not. But in any of those two cases, I think the key technologies would be obviously your front ends, your customer experience platforms, where your sensors to the world, to your customers, right? Where you try to get insights around what the needs and their wants are, whether they're happy with your your channels and what have you. Customer experience platforms, technology today that allows you to be very nimble again, because where we are at in the digital world today, we need speed is of essence. So we need the ability to be able to respond quickly to the business. In EPF's case, we work with the government with a lot of initiatives that we support for the government. So there's a need for us to quickly be able to respond to those kind of initiatives. I think the third area would be technologies that allow you to collaborate with your partners in your ecosystem, APIs, middleware, what have you. Yeah.
If I can echo to that, I'm glad that Afzal mentioned about customers' experience. And most app or web developers, they tend to overlook. They are too fancy with all these graphics interfaces, but they forgot that the whole entire journey of a web and an app is to make it easier. That user experience, UX, is extremely crucial. Since we're talking so much about financial inclusions, right? I mean, the app itself has to be inclusive. Exactly how do you align it with your intended audiences? I mean, you can't be selling something to an audience in tier 3, tier 4 markets speaking the language of T20, for example, right? So bearing in mind that level of inclusivity and ensuring that understanding the demographics of your intended customers are crucial in delivering that customer's experience.
Yeah, I'm not a very technology person, but what I can see from the experience perspective in terms of driving data and analytics, technology definitely play a big part. In terms of how fast are you able to come out the so-called right informations, or maybe the right kind of messagings or profiling to actually assist our customer in terms of actually the right targeting strategy or customer level kind of strategy. So I think nowadays that a lot move into this sort of crowd environment, and definitely it is with this sort of big data assets, all this scalability, agility, like what Afzal has mentioned, is very important, and that is fundamentally has to be put in place in order for us. I think any organizations, if they want us to drive better efficiency or better customer experience, that will be some of the key. Yeah.
If I just may, I think from if you're a startup and you're in the financial services space, I think the two things you need to think about is data security, because you don't want to be hacked, and customer data and even worse, customer assets flowing out the door. So for us, when we first started, we made a very conscious, we would put it on the cloud. Apart from anything else, in terms of cost savings and efficiencies, we could then leverage off the cloud provider's own security protocols rather than a startup security protocol. Then in terms of microservices, which is the way that we built the platform, because we're essentially like an asset manager, so we don't have thousands of transactions per second, thousands of transactions per day. We could afford to have lower latency, so we could afford to build microservices. But like I said, I think ultimately, organizations need to figure out what it is that they want to do, what it is they want to build, how important is customer experience versus just, improving internal efficiencies. And that really then drives what type of technology stack you want to build out.
Absolutely, I think well said. I think one common thread that I listened from all your answer is, I would like to coin it fit for purpose, right? If your purpose is about customer centricity, let's drive something to that. It could be cybersecurity as well, right? It's really about fit for purpose. And I just remembered one of the clients that I consulted. We were debating like how best to interact with the customer, right? Is it the use of sophisticated CRM tools? How do we interact with them? Finally, we landed on WhatsApp, because if it's about some information that you need to broadcast and keep up the engagement, WhatsApp can do a very good job at it, right? So, and there are a lot of technology out there. One does need to know what is it for, and then find what are the best fit technology on. And Robin, you also highlighted an important point. Technology is quite sophisticated. I mean, there are many ways to deal with it. But I would say that's not the hardest part. From our point of view, the hardest part is actually the digital talent, the humans in that whole equation, right? And as you know, these days, the digital talent, we are talking about the new talents like data scientists, like the UI, UX designer, like the solution engineers, right? So, and many of our clients actually told us that it's actually very difficult to A, train all this talent in-house, B, to attract the talent, C, to retain them, right? So it seems like there's a no end of really trying to get all this talent, right? And clearly organizations that have done that well will win because the technology is static, the talent itself is dynamic and can continuously learn and evolve. From your own experience and what you've seen, how do we deal with this whole digital talent challenge?
From a startup's perspective, again, I think the digital talent thing is, in one sense, a challenge, but also not a challenge. And I think 2020 has proven that. I think it really depends on the ethos of the organization, the mindset of the organization. I mean, Hello Gold, we started off life as a digital organization, so we don't have legacy constraints. So for us, at a very simple level, whether you sit at the desk on the floor below, whether you sit at desks across oceans, actually doesn't really matter to us. So, at one level, we don't need to hire from Malaysia. Of course, it would make more sense. It's more convenient to do so, but we can hire at a global level. And COVID has, in many ways, has proven that. So from actually the acquisition of talent is not a challenge because you now have a global platform in which you can do that. Now, in terms of creating brand awareness, that's much more challenging, right? As a startup, you need to use social media, you need to use internal networks to try and find these folks. You don't have the brand equity of Experian or EPF or MDEC or Google to do that. But that builds up over time within your own ecosystem, and people get to know you. Then in terms of retention, we've had people that have stayed with us since the beginning because they're happy with the way that we work, particularly now that we still continue to work from home and it's all digital. But there are also people that hang around and then want to move on because they can't get what they need from the organization. And that's fine too. I think that what organizations need to do is to have a people strategy that reflects the reality of life, not expecting people to stay for 5-10 years, but that there needs to be a constant recruitment of new talent. I know organizations that constantly go to universities to bring in interns, and then from the interns, they recruit. So they're constantly replenishing the talent pool.
Yeah. We face this challenge as well at EPF. I think it's definitely a challenge to be able to retain, attract, recruit talent in this space. And I think you almost have to take a multi-pronged approach. So of course, internal staff, recruitment, traditional recruitment, that goes without saying. We've got this Future Fit program where we look at essentially 3 key stakeholder groups within EPF. The masters, where we need to ensure that they've achieved a certain level of digital literacy. We then have the guys who are a bit more focused, beyond the foundation elements. And if we've got another group that are really the specialized ones, which potentially looks at potentially being certified, going to more advanced topics and what have you. But I think that's internally. I think when it comes to being able to fuel and support your transformation or your digitalization efforts, I think you've got to go beyond that. I think we need to start looking at potentially having strategic partnerships in place, and whether that includes working with accelerators to perhaps accelerate the process of bringing up the level of digital competencies or capabilities within the organization, working with tech enablers, working with research partners. But essentially, I think it's going to be a combination of, yes, focusing on upskilling and developing and retaining and attracting talent internally, but also looking at working with partners so that they can support some of your digital talent needs.
I just want to paint the current reality. Actually, unemployment is rising. A lot of people being laid off because of the current pandemic situation. I think it calls for people who have lost their jobs to start looking into reskilling. And it's crucial actually, and as a lot of jobs are moving towards data and digital, everyone needs to have the skills, the digital skills to be equipped in order for them to be retained and to be recruited, re-recruited, and then to be retained in that organization. I just want to introduce a platform that MDEC has put together. This is a digital skills training directory that has solutions. We work with partners, we work with training providers. Content that can help you in terms of reskilling your programming skills, your data analytics skills, program management, design thinking, security, you name it. There are about hundreds of courses that are available on this training directory. And we partner up with Penjana, right? There's an initiative, Penjana Hiring Initiative, where companies would then be able to rehire these talents that have reskilled themselves with digital skills. A training subsidy of 4,000 ringgit are being made available through SOCSO to help these people who have been unemployed to get into the workforce again, getting subsidy from SOCSO and Penjana, and hopefully the unemployment can get better.
Yeah, I think that I just want to add on to what Nohizam said, right? I explore with the MDEC in terms of the this SAL program. I think there is this STAR program used to be, right, in terms of from people from, I think, graduate from university, then how do we actually get them in on a contract or project basis? And from there, how do we actually eventually, if we find that is the right group of people, we can also actually employ them directly. For experience, right, from the experience perspective, definitely as organizations, we adopt a people-first approach. That is actually fundamentally, people is at the core of the business of ours. And we drive a lot of innovations actually throughout different parts of the world. And there are, I think, total about 4 data labs that actually is being set up across different countries. And there is one set up in Singapore, which is actually serving the region. And one of the things that from organization standpoint to do is that driving this so-called innovations or innovative kind of environment to give the challenge or give the opportunity for people to come together to solve a certain problem. So for that basis, helping client, working together with clients to solve a particular problem or creating a new way of solutions through all these data scientists or new way of AI machine learning. So that is definitely one of the things that we are driving at. And over in Malaysia, we also have about, I think, 800 staff in Cyberjaya. That is our global delivery center, driving in terms of analytics development, serving the whole APAC region. So that itself, we are also working with a university in terms of maybe hiring interns, in terms of coming out a structured training program to make sure that these are the talents that we can actually groom them and continuously, if we find the right one, and we will actually continue to retain the talents within the organization.
Thank you, panelist member. I really like how all of you talk about growing talent as well. And that's absolutely right. Because if you think about digital is an overlay, if you may, right? If you do digital marketing, you need to know about marketing skills, right? If you do digital procurement, you need to know about procurement. So it's about having the intrinsic skills that you have, marketing, procurement, and then overlay that with digital. And that requires training because you can't get someone that know both from the start, right? And a lot of it got to do with how you design to the digital to help those individuals. I mean, if you think about say the Grab drivers now, I mean, many of them can just use an app very easily to conduct a business, right? And that actually ties back to where the way BCG sees it when we have this team called Bionic, where you combine the technology and human, right? If you design that well, that can actually help to solve the digital talent problem. On that note, when we think about talent, what follows quite closely is actually culture. Because it's not enough just have a pool of people that knows about digital, that are enabled by digital. You need to win. You need to almost think like a startup, right? To really act in a more agile pace, because the world is getting more and more complex. Things are moving faster and faster. The real sustained winning strategy is to be able to adapt in an agile fashion, right? We have worked with our clients to create the agile at scale concept, which is learning from the tech startup like Spotify to apply agile in the tech environment. How do you scale it up and apply it to the rest of the organization? So for example, ING Bank in Netherlands, they have done it successfully. The whole organization, the whole bank itself run like an agile fashion, where individual from marketing, from product, from analytics, from IT, they all sit together to deliver towards a customer outcome, right? As opposed to their own functional area. Coming back to your organization and what we have seen, how do you see this whole concept of digital culture, or the other words, agile, working in your environment?
Well, I think we recognize the need to be more nimble, to be more agile in our organization. We have initiated a number of agile pilots, I would say, where we assemble ourselves in terms of this cross-functional team, business and IT together, working on a common goal, working, within the framework of Scrum and doing sprints and what have you. So that's in place. we hope that with the small successes that we're getting in between, that we would be able to then eventually scale up to the enterprise and be able to adopt agile at scale. So that's certainly the direction that we're headed to. We're also looking from an organization perspective around restructuring some of our customer divisions. In the past, we've been organized according to functional domains, registration, contribution, withdrawal, and what have you. So we're also looking at aligning those divisions to more product and customer segments. So we get a bit more clarity around the focus areas, which is obviously the customers or our members. So those are some small things that we're doing. I think obviously it's not just about adopting agile. I think it is about us being able to shape the entire organization, adopting this digital or agile mindset, being able to be courageous, being able to experiment with ideas. But then when it doesn't happen, when that's not successful, then we pull the plug, or we dare to stop the initiatives. So really trying to go along the approach where let's not spend millions of money, 8 to 12 months of implementation effort to roll out a system, but taking smaller incremental approaches, but ensuring that whatever we do at the end of the day, meets the business objectives, but it's what the customer needs and wants.
Thank you, Hamza.
I don't want to talk about agility in government. I think that would warrant a separate discussion. It's just an observation made. You mentioned about organizations turning into startups. These notions about startups, and I think Robin will be able to tell better, of being agile. All right. I think a lot of there's some similarities between agility and speed. Speed would help you to get things faster. It's really quick wins, actually. Nimble in certain sense, but it's very short term. I think agility is more than that. It's about being more nimble, as well as being able to move accurately. I guess that's where data comes in. And organizations that are agile would then be able to look at it not just only from quick win standpoint, being able to pivot and being able to sustain and scale for the long-term impact. So these notions about organizations, have we heard about banks wanting to be startups, and they do a lot of PR, mentioning about, we have to be as agile as startups. I do not know much about that, and I don't think that I am in agreement with that notion, because startups who are not agile will eventually die as well, right? I think even startups like any other organizations would have to be nimble, would have to be agile in order for them to continue sustain and scale.
I guess I have a very controversial perspective on this. I'm not convinced, and empirically, there's so many studies about the longevity of a company. All companies start as a startup at some point in their lives, and at some point they ossify. They lose the ability to innovate. I mean, there's countless examples, and the best one being probably Nokia in recent times, right? So I think there's a huge challenge, even more so in a regulated industry like financial services. And it's not just Malaysia, it's everywhere. I mean, I can give you countless, and everyone will know countless examples of just incredibly bad customer experience that is digitized. I'll give you just one. I was signing agreements with a bank, I won't name the bank, and it was digital, but the bank officer made me sign 5 times. I said, it's a digital signature, you can just beam it to all 5 documents. I said, no, and she came with a really clever answer. She said, we need to make sure that you know what you're signing, which is absolutely correct, except for the fact that the monitor was facing her and not me. So I still didn't know what I was signing. But my point is this, is that the mindset and the culture of the organization is such that I think it's very, very difficult to change processes systemically. You can improve the efficiencies of a 10-step process to the 10 most efficient 10 steps, but to change the 10 steps to just 3 steps, I think, well, involves change, which people typically don't want. It probably will put at risk jobs, which obviously people don't like. and it requires a different way of doing things, which has to cascade from the CEO and the board and shareholders all the way down. And I think that is incredibly challenging. I think there's potentially a faster, more secure way of doing it, which is to strategically decide which part of the organization can be digitized and which part can't. To kind of let the part that's going to be digitized slowly die, but at the same time build an SPV, a different vehicle that's housed differently, staffed by different people to grow that. And so that you don't get contaminated. Let them set their own rules and policies and processes and let them go away. And to your point, if they fail, they'll fail fast, like a startup. I think a big challenge for a lot of organizations is that failure is not an option. And I think, and not organizations can do this. I'm not suggesting EPF does this because my money's with EPF, but other financial institutions can do that. And I think just trying to do it within the whole organization on its own, I think is oftentimes 9 out of 10 times doomed to fail.
Yeah, sorry if I can just, I totally agree. I think, even as we're piloting all of this and learning how to, carry this on and whatnot, I think that's a question that we face every day. Is like, is this something that should be applied to the entire organization, right? Is this the magical rule or framework that will give us the successes of startups or whatnot? And that's a constant struggle. You're right. I think at the end of the day, it is about, having the areas that fit agile or that mode of the startup approach. Yes, we'll have that. But I think there's also a part of the organization that may not, undergo that process.
Yeah, I kind of agree because this agile approach, right? If you apply across the whole organizations, it depends on which functions and which area are you looking at, right? So operational aspect, or if you look at certain area, this may not work as much as some other area. If you talk about product, you talk about application development. So by applying agility, I think it works in a certain functional area, but it to cascade out through the whole organization, that always is a challenge, right? Because it's how do you drive it? And if you spend too much energy and focus on that, does it really get in terms of the result that you want? I have seen, to be fair, that I have seen a bank who wanted to apply this agile approach, but they apply it in a certain area, which they want to make sure that helps that so-called particular functions or business units to actually come up with some of the innovative idea. I think that would work. So from a rollout perspective, from a small functional area, and eventually, unless that you really see there is a benefit to implement so-called organization-wide, then that is something that can take into consideration.
Yeah, I think it's quite clear. I think clearly when we talk about agile, it's not about one blueprint and everyone needs to do the same way, right? I think what the common theme here is let's just pick it where it makes sense, right? Changing the mindset, making it faster, having sort of a redesign of processes in there. I think it's about more picking up the theme of agile than to just sort of use the buzzword of agile, right? Now let's come to the last element, which is around ecosystem and partnership. So in this digital world, there's this phrase that we hear a lot. It's called co-opetition. On one hand, you are cooperating. On the other hand, you are competing, right? And you do need partners to really augment your capability, whether it's a customer ecosystem, whether distribution, right? And companies that have built partnership well, they actually cement themselves in a good position within the ecosystem. So how have your organization really leveraged partnership to win in this digital world?
Yes, that's what we do. Look, I mean, partnerships is a key part of our strategy, right? We work with big players like Boost, Touch and Go Digital, Grab, and we constantly have a BD pipeline of big partners that want to build financial services platform. I think the kind of trend started way back when mobile operators want to build everything in-house, and they suddenly realized that they weren't great content creators. They just want to create the ecosystem and maintain the ecosystem. So I think collaboration between startups with startups and incumbents is here to stay, and is absolutely key so that everyone can get best of breed.
I think it's even more apparent in MDEC. You need to be slipping with the enemies in in the context where, in a way, I mean, we're driving contributions of digital economy to the country, then we're competing with other countries, right? But you can't dismiss the fact that these other countries, the ecosystem that you're building, are also contributing. So competition, I like to use this analogy of MDEC being a dance floor, and when you have the right ambience, the right music, the right ecosystems, right? People will come in, and eventually your enemies, your competitions will come in and dance with you as
That's
well.
right.
And there's nothing wrong of extending the dance floor to be as large as possible, because eventually competition, as what you said, will then create mutual benefits to both parties, or multiple parties for that matter.
I think it's almost a given in this day and age that you've got to be able to collaborate and partner. I think if you look at EPF, on one hand, we are constrained with what we can provide given our resources, capabilities, capacity, what have you. But on the other hand, we do have this long-term vision around enhancing, expanding, supplementing our portfolio of products and services, the advisory that we provide. And the reality is a lot of that can't be provided internally within EPF. We've got to partner, whether it's partnering with people who have who provide maybe investment opportunities, partnering with other players to provide data, partnering players who can expand our contribution or collection channels, working with the e-wallets. So I think definitely that's partnership is a core element of our strategy moving forward.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, maybe just a few keywords, right? I think Experian definitely a strong supporter in terms of partnership, and as that what you can see in terms of we have struck out quite a lot of strategic partnership and venture across Southeast Asia, and just back in Malaysia, we have partnerships with Ringgit Plus in terms of the digital channel for financial product, and how do we enable them in terms of with the data as well as decisioning solutions to hit out to the right target consumer group. We are also working with telco as well as a lot of other data partners in terms of forming the overall data ecosystem. To us, data is also key, especially when it comes to the data part.
Thank you. So speaking of partnership, I think we partner quite well on this panel. So Hizam, Robin, Afzal, Don, thank you very much for sharing your very practical insight on how to win in this digital world. For the audience out there, I hope you capture some of these good nuggets that you can bring back and apply it in your organization. We started off this session by saying that there is a strong, fierce urgency to act now, right? And with this practical advice, many of these things you can already start implementing. So thank you for spending time with us. We wish you all the best in your digital and data transformation journey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We hope you have enjoyed the financial track industry panel discussion as much as we did here. Thank you so much to CF Afzal, Don, Robin, and Hizam for such a great and insightful discussion. It is most definitely amazing to have heard so many different perspectives on this issue. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us until the end of the session. As I've mentioned earlier, we are giving away 3 exciting prizes at each of the 8 sessions. And all you need to do is complete a short survey by scanning the QR code that is shown on your screen, or go to bit.ly/DXDsurvey3. So day 2's morning session is now a wrap, but we have 5 more awesome sessions left. Coming up after the lunch break in the afternoon session is the drone thematic track that is complemented by OFO Tech. Also joining the session are some of the industry-leading drone tech subject matter experts and practitioners. They are from MDEC, Mimos Berhad, and Opus International Berhad. I am genuinely excited to see how this goes, because I think there's a lot more things that we need to discuss about drone technology. To learn more about the conference program and speakers profile, please scan the QR code on the top right of the screen, or go to bit.ly/dxdagenda. Please also share the Digital X Data 2020 program with your colleagues and your friends. It really helps us out and it helps spread the world and the knowledge. If you need any assistance from us in this conference program, please email us at events@thestar.com.my. I'm signing out, but this page will remain live in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And remember to complete the short survey and stand a chance to win one of the 3 exciting prizes. Thank you and see you again later this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Bye.
Finding it a hassle to ship your parcel overseas? Wouldn't it be great if you didn't need to travel to the drop-off point or could avoid filling out lengthy consignment notes? With DHL on the go, you can now send parcels or documents easily. Tell us your shipping details and let our chatbot guide you the rest of the way. Make payment through a secure payment gateway. Arrange a pickup at your preferred location. All of this is done via WhatsApp from your home, office, or anywhere, at any time. Scan the QR code or WhatsApp us now. Ready, chat, go! With DHL on the go.